Hey everyone, welcome back. Thought that I'd have a little bit of a change of pace where, I've been doing a lot of videos in the studio that I kind of set up. Thought, yeah, have you guys out here by the fire while I'm just kind of musing over some things. I did take some notes. You can tell by the title what the video is about. Not a very nice subject to talk about. But the more that I think about it, the more reality starts to kind of sink in. And I think most of us are not going to make it through World War III. Most of us are not going to make it through World War III. There's too many factors involved and too many obstacles that are almost insurmountable. And the odds are stacked against us in almost every respect. So that doesn't mean that it's pointless to try and just to give up and not even try. Of course, I should say many of us, I'm going to say most of us, probably have a really strong sense of self-preservation. Otherwise, humanity would have died a long time ago if we just, anytime there was any adversity, we just gave up, said, whatever, it's too difficult. We wouldn't be around here. So that's one of the things that you can certainly chalk up to humanity being good at, and that's surviving a lot of odds. Now, that doesn't mean that humanity is going to be thriving through World War III. I think anybody who has their head screwed on straight would understand how bad things can get when it comes to scenarios like that. Especially in the modern day, where many people have absolutely no idea how to fend for themselves. The dependency that we have on modern civilization is through the roof. I'm really grateful that there are some people who are more than happy to forego all the modern conveniences and rough it the whole time. There's plenty of people that are out there, and that's why I know that humanity will make it through. I think there's going to be an enormous number of people that will perish in it, though. And if you're thinking that you're one of those people that are going to be able to make it, and you're sitting in your apartment and you've got like a few days worth of food in your fridge and that's it, chances are you're not going to make it. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to go south whenever World War III goes into full swing, because we're already there. If you are in denial that World War III is in the future at some point and it hasn't already arrived, there's so many things that you can look at. And of course, you can't look at mainstream media for this kind of information, because they're still thinking that they got to carry water for the political party that's in power right now. So they're going to deny everything all up and down. And that would be the same thing even if the opposite party was in power. I'm fairly certain that they also would not want to admit that things are as dire as they are right now. Nobody wants to face that kind of reality. I keep using these absolutes. There's an awful lot of people out there that don't want to face that kind of reality. And all you have to do is just look around and see what people are up to. I think that there are a lot of people that are starting to question what's going on when they're going to the grocery store and they're looking at their bill, and the bill that, for 2-3 weeks worth of food used to cost $150 is now $300, $400. That's crazy. They go to the pump to fill up their gas tank. Their Toyota used to take maybe $10, $15 to fill up. And now it's like $35, $40 to fill it up. Granted, prices are different all over the place. Here in Texas, it's not tremendously bad. It's not as good as it was, that's for sure. But it's still doable as long as you have the income to do it. you know, the unfortunate reality is that people that aren't doing so well and are just living slightly above the poverty line are really the ones that are going to get hit the hardest by all of this. And it's really, really frustrating that things have gotten to this point. And it's very unfortunate, and that's an understatement. So back to World War III. Right now, things are focused primarily in Ukraine, but it's going to spill over. You know, Ukraine's already talking about some crazy stuff where they're going to go and try to help out Moldova. And also they're talking about doing some silly thing. Again, this is all talk. So, you know, the rhetoric is that they're going to take back Crimea. And the Russians are not going to let that happen. That's just not going to happen. I'm struggling to understand where Ukraine thinks that they're going to be able to take back other areas and defend other countries. That makes no sense to me. They're as it stands, they're losing ground in Ukraine on a daily basis. The only reason why they're still standing is because there's been an awful lot of external support. And that includes the US, which I am vehemently against. I think that we've had there's been a very few number of years that have elapsed where we have not been involved in some sort of foreign war for decades upon decades now. There was only one certain point in time a few years back where we weren't really involved in hardly any wars. There were a few skirmishes and some conflicts here and there, but it wasn't full-blown, let's send the troops over, send supplies here and supplies there. Not like what we're seeing right now. This is really spun out of control at this point. Russia's said repeatedly that there's no going back. There's no room for peace talks at this point in time. And I don't think it's going to be too far along before we see ambassadors recalled out of Russia. Unless they're really friendly with Russia. Like you got China, Iran. I think even Africa is starting, some of the African nations are starting to side with China and Russia. You got North Korea, who's also they've always been pretty unstable, but now they're starting to do their saber rattling again and launching missiles into the China Sea. So this is really getting really bad. It's all over the place. Like Iran apparently is getting super close to the point where they're going to have nuclear weapon capabilities. Their refinement has really gone pretty far, and that's provoking Israel into ramping up their rhetoric and saber rattling as well. Russia has repeatedly said that in no uncertain terms, they will watch the world burn first rather than allow things to, in their perspective, threaten Russia even more. They're really convinced that, you know, the world is against them. And it's really hard to either argue for or against that position, because you could see their points, and you could see, you know, the points from the other side, and everybody has valid points, but it's also all tainted with propaganda. Because make no mistake, both sides, Russia would love to take over more territory, which is why they're doing this with Ukraine. They really felt that Ukraine was getting too close to NATO and joining NATO, and they've always said that that's akin to inciting war with them. So they felt that they really needed to go after Ukraine to push NATO back. And they have repeatedly stated again and again, they will use nuclear weapons. They've tore up the treaties that we've had or I should say that they've had with NATO. So the door's open, and I believe that here in the US, we've also done away with a lot of the treaties that we had that said, hey, you know, we're never going to strike first in a nuclear attack. Russia's done the same thing, done away with you know, we're not going to be the aggressors. Nope. So now it's just kind of a matter of time before something happens, whether it's intentional or a mistake, because mistakes unfortunately happen quite often. And you could just look back on history and see the number of times where, you know, these nuclear superpowers have raised the alert to the level that they weren't sure whether or not they needed to go through with a launch. And it was a mistake. There was other factors that made it look like there was some threat that was imminent when there wasn't. So it's really a really scary time right now. And those who just want to bury their head in the sand and think that we're not on the verge of World War III and that nuclear war is not going to happen, I hope you're right. I really do. I really hope that you're right about that. Because like the video of this title says, you're not going to survive. There's a very, very good chance that you're not going to survive. There's a good chance I'm not going to survive. I want to say that even people that are preppers most of them aren't going to survive either, even if you have all the preps in the world. Unless you have some sort of nuclear fallout shelter that you can retreat to that is well stocked and you've been able to keep it hidden and nobody knows about it. And the only thing that happens is that it's a nuclear holocaust, which is kind of funny to say that this is a strategy that'll get you through things to a degree, then you're probably going to be in a really, really dangerous position, with death being somewhat of a certainty at some point in time. So I wrote down some notes, and I just kind of want to reference those to make sure that I'm kind of keeping everything, all the bullet points that I want to hit. I want to make sure that I'm going to hit all those. So let's just start off with like an EMP scenario. And if you're not aware, EMP is electromagnetic pulse. I'm fairly certain that most of the people that watch this channel probably know about that. But, you know, I haven't really talked too much about prepping or anything like that. So maybe haven't really attracted an audience that is super aware. So bear with me if you know about that, about some of this stuff. It might just be like you're going, yeah, I already know about this stuff. So, hey, you know, if that's the case and you just want to watch my video, I appreciate that. So, EMP scenario, electromagnetic pulse. There are substantial weapons, nuclear weapons, that are on both sides. I want to say that probably Russia has, from what I can understand, and there could be some secret stuff that we have on our side too, so I'm not really sure. But one thing is definitely for sure, Russia has already tested out the world's largest nuclear weapon, that Tsar Bomba. And that was a long time ago. I think that was in the 60s, if memory serves, which I'm not going to rely on it because my memory's pretty bad. But they tested out one of the largest nuclear weapons that's ever been detonated, and it was just unbelievably huge. Now imagine the kind of firepower that they have now that they developed past that point. And the way that an EMP works is it's really a nuclear detonation, but it's done way up high in the atmosphere. I don't know if it's the stratosphere or not. Stratosphere is like, I mean, super duper far. That's where the jet stream and all that stuff is way up high in the stratosphere. But what they do is they detonate one of those high up in the atmosphere. So you don't have to really worry about any radiation, because that's, I mean, it's going to be up there, but then it'll eventually, some of the there's not really particles for any of that radiation to attach to. So there'll be some radiation effects from it, but that's not the big thing that EMPs do. The electromagnetic pulse is designed to take out anything that has any kind of electronics in it. It is a massive amount of electricity that is in the form of literally an electromagnetic pulse. And when that thing hits any electronics, it knocks it all out. It fries the electronic circuitry. So anything that relies on electronics is gone. That includes the grid. The grid's going to be down. Everything electronic is going to be fried. Your cell phones. If you've thought about ahead to like for communications and have, you've done some prepping, you got CBs, CB radios, they're electronic. They're all going to be gone. Your car's not going to work. Any vehicle that you have is not going to work because almost every single vehicle that's been manufactured for decades now has electronic components inside of it. So they're all going to be fried. That electromagnetic pulse is going to fry all that circuitry. And even if you manage to, shield your vehicle, your fuel is only going to go so far. So your range is going to be incredibly limited, and you're not going to be able to refuel it. Not easily. Maybe you'll be able to go and like siphon some gas here and there, assuming that you can find vehicles that people aren't going to get really murderously angry at you for trying to take their fuel, because their vehicles might not work, but they may need to rely on their fuel to do things like start a fire so that way they can cook or stay warm depending on where they live. Luckily, out here in Texas, it does get cold, but it doesn't get cold like in other areas of the US. Not that often anyways. I mean, it can happen and it has happened recently. I think most people are really aware of the issues that we had here a few years back when our grid went down, and it was down for a while during a major Arctic blast that was pretty unprecedented for this location. So being that you're not going to be able to go to a gas station and pump gas because the pumps aren't going to work. They take electricity. The grid's going to be down. The electronics are going to be fried on the pumps. You're not going to be able to get it out. You're going to have to do some hand pumping if you can manage it, and you're able to avoid the roving bands of people that are also going to have the same mindset. And talk about constrained resources during a grid down situation where we're in the middle of World War III. Everybody's going to be vying or fighting over resources. So you're going to be on your own. There's not going to be a fire department. There's not going to be any law enforcement. There won't be any hospitals. Nobody's going to come out to your house to repair anything. There won't be any postal service. And the grocery stores will be stripped bare, and they're not going to work anyways. So if you're thinking you could just take your money and go to the store and stock up, good luck with that. I mean, look what happened during, the pandemic, where people were trying to get toilet paper and paper towels. They were going nuts, fighting in the stores over paper towels. That's insane. If you think that things were rough just trying to get to the store to get necessities like that, when people understand that World War III is fully underway and the grid's down because there was an EMP attack, you're not going to get anything from the store. So with no law enforcement, we're going to be in WROL. And if you're not familiar with that term, that's without rule of law. That means that there won't be any for one thing, how are you going to contact any law enforcement? If there's people that are showing up to your door and they're determined to take what you have, there's nobody that you're going to be able to call. There won't be any law enforcement that are going to show up. They're not going to be able to get, they're going to be in the same position everybody else is in. They're not going to be able to have enough vehicles to get anywhere. It's going to be horses, and again, trying to find a police officer, good luck. I think that there won't be any. They're going to be in the same boat all of us are in. They're going to be struggling to survive. Families are going to go hungry, and hunger is going to make people desperate. So if you're in a city, you're going to be dead after about a month, mostly. And if you're in a suburb, you might be able to struggle for like 3 to 6 months, assuming that you've prepared for everything, and then you're probably going to be dead. And even people in rural areas, like I'm in a fairly rural area. It's like on the outskirts of the suburbs, but we're going to be dead, because there's going to be people that are going to fan out from the urban and suburban places, and they're going to be looking for resources. They're going to have hungry families. They're going to be hungry. They're going to look and they're going to understand that the people in the suburbs, like after they get done ransacking that and the suburb people don't have anything and then the urban people don't have anything, it's just going to go out beyond those points. So people like me that are on the outskirts, you know, I'm a good like 20, 30 minutes away from, you know, San Antonio. And that's not really that far. When people are hungry, they're going to pack up their bags. They're going to grab their knives and whatever else that they have, firearms if they have them, and they're going to go looking for places that have resources to keep them alive. And when it's a life or death struggle, you better believe people will do whatever they can to survive. And if that means taking what you have by force, then they're going to do it. So the bottom line really is that if you're not already in a prepping community that's in a remote, defensible location, you're probably dead. Because there will be bands of people. They're gonna stick together because they're gonna all have a goal. They're gonna all have the same goal in mind, and that's survival. And they're gonna recognize really quickly that unless they are sticking together and ganging up on people to take what they have, they're not going to survive. That's going to be one of the very first things that people are going to learn when it comes to survival, is that being in being with other people that are of like mind is the only way that they're going to get by. So yeah, you and your small family, you're not going to make it alone, because you got to understand that if it's just you and your family, like we'll just take, you know, myself and my wife, it's just me and her. You're going to have to stand watch. There has to be a watch 24/7 to look out for these crazy people. Well, I can't call them crazy. They're desperate. They're desperate people that are going to do desperate things to stay alive and to keep their families alive. My wife and I are going to have to stand watch 24/7. And how are you going to watch 360 degrees around your home? You know, you have to like literally come outside or look out the windows all this, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to make sure that you're not going to see these people are going to try and sneak up and bust in your door to take your stuff. And everybody's going to have to learn how to do everything for themselves. We have to learn how to, I understand most people do know how to do some of these things to a degree, but you got to understand that there's a lot of modern conveniences that people are used to. So they're going to have to relearn some of these things. And that's cooking, cleaning, growing food. See, we're starting to get into the territory where most people don't have to do this themselves. Grow their own food, raise livestock or poultry, repair, conduct maintenance. You're going to have to learn how to take care of yourselves. You're not going to be able to go to a doctor. There's not going to be any doctors available. So healthcare, that's on you. Dentistry, that is also on you. You're going to have to learn how to pull teeth, because that's really about the only thing you're going to be able to do. You start getting a cavity, or you know, you get a crack in your tooth, anything along those lines, the only way that you're going to be able to have any kind of relief is to have yank your tooth out. That's going to suck. None of this is going to be available about 2 to 3 months into World War III. And that's completely, that's really a factor of what sort of, how things escalate. Like if it's an EMP right off the bat, followed by strategic nukes, then you can just, all that stuff is going to be gone instantly. People are going to be panicking. They're not going to know what to do. It's going to be chaos right off the bat. If that's the way that things really start off, is a volley of EMPs to knock out as much infrastructure as possible, followed by nukes, because that's going to be the logical way of going about it. If they really want to strike hard and disable everything, all of our adversaries are going to go that route, where they're going to be attack with EMPs followed by nukes on strategic locations. You know, any bases of any substantial size, any military bases, gone. Any known missile silos are you're going to hit that. That's all going to be gone. Really, the only thing I think, and that's assuming that we can get the message out, and I suspect that we probably will be able to get some message out, like our military that is in the oceans, whether it's subs or nuclear subs, and all our surface fleet that's out there. There will be a message that I'll be able to get out to them. I'm pretty sure. So there will be a counterstrike in that scenario. But if it's a different scenario where it's more strategic, that doesn't involve nuclear strikes on ground targets and it's just EMPs only, then that's where I think that it'll be like maybe 2 to 3 months. Maybe. It might be like maybe a month with an EMP scenario. But if it's more along the lines of World War III, where martial law is declared, the draft is implemented, and everybody who's young is going to be required to join the military, and we're going to go, probably, I would imagine the stage is going to be once again in Europe. I don't think it's going to be on US shores, not in this kind of scenario. But even with that, that's the best case scenario, where we don't get hit by EMP or followed by nukes, and there's no attack at all on US soil or North American soil. Then more than likely, if things get out of control over in Europe, where Russia, maybe China starts getting involved with like attacking Taiwan, North Korea starts attacking South Korea, Iran starts attacking Israel, that's the kind of scenario where I think that the world is just going to really ratchet up all sorts of military engagement across the entire world. And that's that's the stage that's being set right now with this version of World War III. And I don't mean a fictitious version. I mean, that's reality right now. That's where things are headed. And it's really dependent upon what our opposition does. If they want, I don't think that we're going to escalate things. I think that most of the escalation is happening on the Russian side of things, on the opposition side for right now. And I don't know whose red line is going to get crossed first, whether it's going to be on our side of things, meaning the opposition to China, Iran, and Russia. If there's a line in the sand that's crossed by our opposition, we might decide to go out and escalate things in response to the escalation that's already started when Russia invaded Ukraine. Or it could be the opposite side, where they decide, hey, we see that where things are headed, we need to strike now. So any of that is all entirely possible. Because if there is an actual foreign invasion on US soil, then it's kind of game over, even for the most prepared of us. Even for those communities I was talking about that are in, that they're prepper communities that are still located kind of close to civilizations. Eventually they're going to get found out, assuming that, it's just nothing but an invasion on US soil. Then if we start losing that, then even those most prepared people, they're going to go by. The only thing that will be left really will be those of us who have bugged out into just unbelievable remote locations, like way up in the Cascades, way up in the Rocky Mountains, out in forests in the Appalachian Mountains, remote locations like in Alaska, things like out there, other mountainous ranges where people can kind of bug out to, assuming that they're really adept in living off the land, because that is what people are going to have to do at that point in time, because all the modern conveniences, any supplies they would be able to rely on, even their supply, the supplies that they may have gathered themselves, because as preppers, I'm hoping you guys are preppers, and even if you're recent preppers, that you've got enough supplies to last you for a little bit. But if this drags on for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, even the most prepared of us, there's a very small percentage, I would say less than 1%, who have the supplies and resources to last for an entire decade without any support on the grid, without any external supplies other than what they can get from living off the land. There are very, very few of us that would be able to make it all the way through all that. So I sincerely hope that at the very least, you're prepared to survive through some really, really rough times. Because even in the best case scenario where World War III starts with us sending troops over into Europe and maybe into Japan, maybe to South Korea, to Taiwan, over to Israel and any other nation that's willing to fight to stave off aggression against Israel and maybe some of the allies that are close to them, that it's going to be rough during that even during those times. It's going to be martial law, I believe. And during that period of time, it's going to be up to you, and you got to watch out because nobody's going to be your friend unless you've got really strong ties to your local community. And when I say local community, I mean pretty much your neighborhood. Unless you live in an incredibly small town of less than like 50 people, then your community is going to be your neighborhood. That's going to be about the extent of the people that, if you forge a good bond with them and that you're on friendly terms and you're all like-minded when it comes to this kind of thing. I guess I don't really need this anymore. When it comes to this kind of thing, unless you're really tight with your community, it's going to be really difficult to trust anybody because we're all going to be, sooner or later, looking at resource depletion. And if you're not really friendly with your neighbors and you've got things that they need and they haven't done their due diligence to prepare for everything that's going on right now, they're going to come kicking down doors looking for stuff. So you better be prepared. And that means hardening your home. I think I went over this in my last video with the verge of nuclear and World War III on our doorstep. I highly recommend that you watch that video because there's going to be some tips in there that might help you make it through this, where it's hardening your home against intrusions, stocking up on things, being prepared for all sorts of scenarios. I think the bottom line, though, is that you really should do what you can to be friendly with your neighbors at this point in time. And somehow don't just come right out and say, like, hey, you're prepared for World War III. You don't want to like spook them to the point where they think that you're crazy, because they might not be that informed. The mainstream media isn't talking about a lot of this stuff. They're talking about how Ukraine's doing just fantastic and everything's going great and we're just sending all this money over there and they're going to do just be able to like win against Russia. And I don't see that happening. I honestly don't see that happening, unfortunately. I feel for Ukraine, but at the same point in time, I don't support us sending any money or troops or anything else to Ukraine. At this point in time, this is what Europe should be dealing with. I think the U.S. has been involved in enough wars, and I think we need to get the heck out of this business of war and focus on our own country at this point in time. Because there's a lot of things that are happening right now where folks here in our borders are struggling, and we need to strengthen our borders. We need to strengthen our country, because sooner or later, with the way that things are going, there's going to be a World War III that's going to surface. And if that happens, because if we continue to indirectly provoke Russia by sending all the resources and money over to Ukraine, which is a completely corrupt country. I feel for the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian government can go pound sand as far as I'm concerned. But the Ukrainian people are the ones that I really feel for. They've lost their homes. They're in just a world of hurt. But that doesn't mean that I think that the rest of the world should continue to provoke Russia into further aggression, where they're going to spread out and start attacking the rest of Europe. And they have made no qualms about launching nukes against other nations. And I firmly believe that they're not bluffing. I think that we just keep pushing them and keep pushing them, and it's just going to be a matter of time till they say like enough is enough, and they're going to push that button. And then really just depends on how far they want to go, whether it's going to be just EMPs or they're going to try and actually strike targets on the ground. Because at that point, that's going to be retaliation, and it's going to be nuclear holocaust across the board. And you may be in a position or a location where you survive because you're nowhere near a target, but that's just the start of pretty much Mad Max is what it'll turn into. It's going to be rough. I'm not trying to like scare people. I'm just more trying to raise awareness and really give people a dose of reality. Because if you're not thinking about this kind of thing, then you're going to be one of those people that's going to have to join a group of others to go around and try and find resources to survive. And you're going to have to do some unconscionable acts against fellow man because you didn't prepare. And that's not fair to other people that did. So do what you can now. Do what you can now while there is still time. Because as I mentioned in another video, time is running out. And every day there are reports that we're moving closer and closer to Armageddon. So yeah. And do take time out to enjoy yourself, because once things have escalated to that point, you won't have time to do things like sit out in your backyard and then enjoy the fire and enjoy nature, watching birds, feed, flying around, and because there'll be way too much to do. There'll be way too many concerns about how you're going to survive when it comes to the brink of nuclear annihilation. All right, well, that's really all I have to talk about right now. And I got to go do a lot of things around the house to continue my preparations, because I still have a lot to do around here. That's one of the reasons why I haven't made much content this month. I made that one other video, and this will be the last video I think I'll make for this month, because there's just way too much to do. All right. If you made it through all this, I really appreciate you watching. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Take care.